The German parliament grants the government more powers to uniformly enforce lockdown rules over the entire country. Some opposition parties, critics and protesters see the changes as an unconstitutional overreach.
The German Bundestag on Wednesday voted on legal changes that would give the federal government more powers to push through pandemic restrictions nationwide. The government argues the changes are needed to combat the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic.
In light of the situation, the restrictions, which are difficult and tough, are adequate, proportionate and they are appropriate, Madam Colleague, as we witnessed in almost all countries in Europe.
Some lawmakers see changes to the Infection Protection Act as a power grab. They worry it would undermine Germany's federal system and citizens' basic rights.
Zu festgezurrt, Herr Brinkhaus.
Too entrenched is the will of the government to fight the pandemic with ineffectual means for the opposition to be able to stop their attack on civil liberties, federalism and common sense.
Not far from Parliament, thousands demonstrated against the changes. Protests against the new law have been held in the last few weeks in towns across the country. The stricter rules will limit social gatherings, close businesses, schools and cultural institutions, as well as enforce a controversial overnight curfew. The restrictions would kick in automatically when a city or region reaches 100 cases per 100,000 people for 3 days in a row. The average incidence rate was about 160 on Wednesday. Only one state was below 100. Right now in Germany's federal system, all 16 states apply the rules as they see fit. Some lawmakers pointed out that the Parliament's own research service deems some of the changes, including the curfew, as unconstitutional. Therefore, two opposition parties say they will challenge the law in Germany's highest court. The legislation is due to go to the upper house of Parliament on Thursday.
Hong Kong's press freedom ranks number 80th in the world, and the situation keeps on deteriorating. This is according to Reporters Without Borders' annual report.
Press freedom in Hong Kong keeps on deteriorating. The city is currently in the 80th place among 180 countries and regions across the world. This is based on the annual World Press Freedom Index that non-profit organization Reporters Without Borders, or RSF, released on Tuesday. The report says the national security law allowed Beijing to, quote, intervene directly in Hong Kong in order to arbitrarily punish what it regards as crimes against the state, adding this is especially dangerous for journalists. Last year, Beijing imposed the so-called national security law on Hong Kong. It is widely considered a tool for Beijing to restrict freedoms in the financial hub. The report also mentions Jimmy Lai, the founder of the pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. He was recently charged and sentenced under this law. Last week, the attack on the printing warehouse of the Epoch Times newspaper in Hong Kong also raised attention worldwide. This is the second attack against the Epoch Times in Hong Kong in less than 2 years. RSF called on Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam to punish the attackers, citing freedoms for independent media. Over the past 2 decades, Hong Kong's ranking on the Press Freedom Index has dropped from number 18 to number 80. Meanwhile, Communist China remains number 177 on the index this year, and it is among the world's worst suppressors of press freedom.
The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is doubling down on boosting its so-called patriotic education. This is ahead of the 100th anniversary of the party's founding this July.
Japanese media outlet Nikkei says the regime is replacing foreign books with propaganda-filled ones in school libraries. It's a mandate from Beijing's Education Ministry and has been in effect since April 1st. The move will impact 240 million students in kindergartens, primary and secondary schools across China. It also applies to books recommended by those schools. A wide range of Western titles are on the chopping block. Books that seem to go against party policies are off limits too, including religious texts. After removing foreign books, books that promote communist ideology will dominate school bookshelves. Elementary and secondary schools are expected to showcase books related to Chinese leader Xi Jinping's line of thinking. At the same time, a secondary school in Beijing recently added a collection of Xi's speeches and documents to its libraries. It is titled The Chinese Dream of the Great Rejuvenation of the Chinese Nation. But a number of Chinese scholars have noted an interesting point. Author Qiao Yijian has claimed that today's CCP officials are actually the most pro-Western in Chinese history. While a professor from a major state-backed college also noted that over 1 million spouses and children related to CCP officials have lived overseas. A report from Hong Kong-based magazine Dongxiang echoes the statements. It says 90% of high-level officials' relatives have immigrated to other countries. The figure comes from the party's internal survey data collected a decade ago. Other official records say 8 million people concealed their foreign passports at the time of the survey in order to receive China's state-backed social benefits.
Downing Street has scrapped its plans for White House-style press conferences. That's despite spending £2.6 million on the venue at No. 9 Downing Street.
Kitted out with cameras and rows of chairs for journalists, No. 9 Downing Street has been a backdrop for the most recent televised COVID-19 press briefings, replacing the State Dining Room in No. 10. But Downing Street now says the room, which cost £2.6 million, will no longer be used for its original intention of hosting daily White House-style press briefings. The Culture Secretary says the room will be used to host ministerial briefings instead. The Prime Minister's Press Secretary, Allegra Stratton, was slated to front the press conferences. She'll now move to become the spokesperson for the COP26 Climate Summit. Oliver Dowden told BBC Breakfast on Wednesday the modern press facility will be used by future governments, so isn't a waste of money. The room was first used in March when the Prime Minister addressed the nation about lockdown easing. Labour's deputy leader accused Boris Johnson of running scared of scrutiny, following the news the briefings were to be scrapped.
Chinese telecom giant Huawei may have been able to listen to the Dutch Prime Minister's phone calls. That's according to a 10-year-old report only recently made public. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us the story.
A bombshell report says that Huawei employees in both the Netherlands and China were able to eavesdrop on all calls taking place on one of the Netherlands' largest mobile networks, KPN, including those by the country's then top leader. This is according to a secret internal report by KPN 10 years ago, but it was only made public recently after a Dutch newspaper obtained it. In 2010, the Dutch operator worried that the report could be too damning. If the public knew about it, the report says, their company wouldn't survive. So they kept the findings to themselves. KPN had 6.5 million subscribers at the time, and then Dutch Prime Minister also used the service. The report says Huawei employees were able to know which numbers were tapped by Dutch police and intelligence services. Responding to the Dutch newspaper, KPN said there is no evidence Huawei stole their customer data. Huawei also denied the claims in the report. Huawei's founder and CEO used to work for the Chinese military. The U.S. believes Huawei poses national security risks. The Trump administration ramped up efforts persuading allies to stop using their 5G service. In 2019, KPN dropped Huawei from its 5G network, but continues to use it for other services. Last year, the UK banned network providers from using Huawei products.
New data out says that compared to the French and the Germans, Brits took a bigger financial hit during the COVID-19 pandemic. Differences in lockdowns, income inequality, and unemployment are the driving factors. NTD's Patrick Hayden takes a look at the report.
UK households have been hit the hardest economically from COVID-19 lockdowns when compared to France and Germany. That's the findings of a new report by the Resolution Foundation. It says that while household income between these three countries were similar prior to the pandemic, Brits suffered the most. That was due to tougher lockdowns, bigger income inequality, and steeply rising unemployment. Although during this time Brits were just as likely to lose their jobs as the French, the impact on the standard of living was far bigger. Brits were also twice as likely to take on debt through the pandemic to cover living expenses. The report finds that households where at least one person lost their job, 41% in Britain lost at least a quarter of their income. In Germany, that was 28% of those polled, and in France, just 20%. It says the single biggest factor that stopped spending was the Brits faced lockdowns that were tighter and lasted longer. The report is the first to cover a major cross-country comparison between Europe's largest economies. It polled more than 12,000 people. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
For the French, who spend more time than any other nation eating and drinking, there may be a solution to allow them to enjoy fine dining in their own home, even under lockdown restrictions.
France is still observing a nighttime curfew from 7 p.m. every day due to the pandemic. Restaurants have been forced to close down, but if you have enough money, private chefs can bring fine dining to your home. A trained private chef in France says she was busy before the pandemic. Now she's even busier and serves between 60 and 80 meals a month.
Now
it's true that I have to turn down a lot of requests because I can't split myself in two. It's a bit complicated, but yes, there is a very significant demand.
According to a government decree, private chefs are allowed to serve meals at their customers' homes amid the current restrictions. So for people who used to eat out, private chefs are proving popular.
Company executives used to organize work dinners or lunches with their clients, and now they have to stay at home and invite their clients there, obviously within the limits of the law.
She takes bookings from private individuals, brings her ingredients to their home, and uses their equipment to prepare and serve restaurant-quality dishes. Last Friday, she was booked by a customer to prepare lunch for her and her mother.
We obviously want to go out, see our friends and family, and share meals with them, but we can't. So this is recreating that moment of exchange at home, and it's really great for that. So I am very pleased.
She says she operates within the rules and doesn't work for gatherings of more than 6 people or work after the 7 p.m. curfew. But their service is not within the reach of every Parisian. A lunch for 2 comes in at €170 or about £150 per person.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees.